Welcome. Good almost afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Welcome, everybody. We'll get started just a couple seconds after the top of the hour. Time for people to join from their busy schedules. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. Jam-packed agenda, so I hope people can hop on as we go. Good afternoon, Mark. Thanks for putting that in the chat.
Carol, we continue to populate with people in the waiting room. I'd suggest you give it another minute or two.
That's what I plan to do. Thanks, Laura.
Yep.
And thanks to the HCP team who's in the background letting people in and running all the tech. Dina and Laura, thank you. Good afternoon, Edwin. About another 30 seconds, I'm going to get going. So everybody can settle in and grab their beverage for a
If you
great
have the
session
ability
today.
to correct your name, for those of you who have already joined so that we know who you are, that would be helpful.
And if you do end up with any internet instability, sometimes I find that shutting off the video helps. Not that we don't want to see you, but that sometimes help. I'm going to go ahead and get started and welcome everybody to our Emergency Management Forum. Today, you will all learn about New York City Emergency Management, we call them NYCEM, and their Community Engagement Bureau, and how it integrates with the home care and hospice sectors. This forum is presented as a collaborative effort between New York State's premier associations for home and community-based services, the New York State Association of Healthcare Providers Foundation, or HCP, the Hospice and Palliative Care Association of New York State, they go by HIPCANES, and the Home Care Association of New York State, or HCA. For today's program, you have the option for dial-in or computer audio. Please note that computer audio can sometimes be impacted by your internet connection, but folks don't usually have as much problem with audio as sometimes they do with video, so just keep those things in mind. We do ask that you keep your microphone muted for the duration of the program. Interruptions in the program with unmuted conversations may lead to removal, and you don't want to miss this important information. We love questions. We have plenty of time to address them. So please ask questions during today's presentation using the chat box. Note that if you send a direct message, it cannot be retained after the webinar, and the speakers may miss those. So use the general chat box. We do have we will have Q&A from our speakers following their presentation. And then remember that we do have an open discussion period near the end of the forum. If something related to emergency management comes to your mind that's not covered in the webinar, that is an open discussion for all topics. Last but not least, as always for our emergency management programs, the slides and a recording will be emailed to all registrants. The materials will also be publicly available on each association's website. We have to do our grant disclaimer and thank our grantors. This project is supported by the Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response under the award number shown. Its content is solely the responsibility of the authors and does not necessarily represent the official views of the Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response. This program is made possible by a grant from the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, DOHMH, Office of Emergency Preparedness and Response, or OPER. A lot of acronyms in emergency management. All three of our associations express very special thanks to Fidel Monroe, Senior Program Manager, Long-Term Care, Bureau of Healthcare and Community Readiness at the Office of Emergency Preparedness and Response at New York City DOHMH. Her support is never ending of all of our emergency preparedness work, and we'll hear from her in just a moment. Go over the agenda real quick. We did our welcome. We will have some introductions. And for the bulk of today's program, we are thrilled to hear from Angel Perez and Sofia Rivero Perez from New York City Emergency Management, NYCEM, Bureau of Community Engagement. NYCEM will take questions, our NYCEM representatives will take questions after their presentation. And then in true form fashion, each association will provide some emergency management updates that are relevant to home care and hospice providers in New York State. And then, of course, we'll open up the floor for any open discussion. Attendees are welcome to bring up and discuss any emergency management topic that's on their minds. We will try to have answers for you on the spot, and when we don't, we will get back to you in the follow-up emails. Finally, just before 2 p.m., we'll close out the forum and we'll ask you to please complete this session evaluation. Those evaluations are always looked at and they're so important as we plan our programming. You've been listening to me for a minute. I am Carol Dio. I'm a registered pharmacist and Director of Regulatory Affairs and Special Programs here at HCP. I take care of all things emergency management related, and I will turn it over to my friend Al Cardillo.
Thank you very much, Carol. And again, welcome everyone to the program today. We especially thank our presenters at NYCEM for this really invaluable information, particularly as we're getting ready to enter the heavy season, the heavy winter season of emergency planning and intervention. And we've already had maybe a little bit more than our taste of it already. Thank you also, Fidel, for your leadership in the program. Again, cannot say enough about the steady support that you give, as does the New York City Department of Health and Human Services. So again, welcome everybody to the program. We look forward to discussions throughout. And I'd like to turn it over to Eva Cohen, our colleague. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Eva Cohen. I'm Director of Regulatory and Community Affairs at the Hospice and Palliative Care Association of New York State. And I have been working with Al and Carol and Fidel on emergency preparedness for about 4 years now. And I appreciate all of the collaboration.
Would you like to introduce Fidel? Or would you like me to grab that?
Oh, sure. I'm happy to do that.
I know you love to.
I do. Fidel Monroe is the Senior Program Manager for Long-Term Care at the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, also known as the New York City Health Department. And she is our guiding light through emergency preparedness for all of the associations and for many others, I am sure, and we so appreciate her.
Thank you, Eva. Good afternoon, everyone. As Al Carol mentioned, I'm Fidel Monroe, and I'm the Home Care and Hospice and Palliative Care Liaison for Long-Term Care. I'm the Senior Program Manager at the New York City Department of Health, Office of Emergency Preparedness in the Bureau of Healthcare and Community Readiness. It's my pleasure to be here with you virtually. I welcome you all and thank you for being here. I thank my colleagues from NYCEM for presenting today, Sophie and Angel. Really appreciate it. Today we gather for the first of 2 forums in collaboration with NYCEM that will be held as part of the Emergency Preparedness Programming made possible by the funding dollars of the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Responses Hospital Preparedness Program, and that's referred to as HPP. From time to time, I discuss this funding at length, but today I'll just reiterate that HPP is a cooperative agreement that establishes a foundation for national healthcare readiness and promotes a consistent national focus. As presented in the previous forum co-hosted by the Staten Island Coalition Active in Disaster and previous webinars, the benefits of including community resources in emergency planning are immeasurable. Benefits such as establishing communication channels to share information and including community partners in comprehensive emergency planning, hence effectively putting policies and procedures in place that dramatically improve response coordination and response outcomes. Today's presentation by New York City Emergency Management, NYCEM as we call them, the agency responsible for coordinating citywide emergency planning and response for all types of emergencies, big or small, will focus on 3 programs within the agency's Bureau of Community Engagement and discuss how integration with home care and hospice providers in New York City can benefit communities and the clients you serve in those communities, neighborhoods, geographical areas, however you look at it. It is my hope that your participation here today allows you to take away some bit of information that you can incorporate into your own emergency planning. I'd like to acknowledge that the healthcare system in New York City has strengthened with the addition of your sectors, home care and hospice, to the New York City Healthcare Coalition, which continues to grow stronger because of your feedback and your involvement. On behalf of the New York City Health Department, I'd like to wish each of you a happy holiday season and a healthy and prosperous 2026. Thank you. Back to you, Carol.
I'm going to hand it right over to Eva to introduce our speakers, and then we'll take a second to change our slides and get to the meat of the program.
Thanks, Carol. So I'd like to introduce Angel Luis Perez. He's a community engagement specialist with Ready, New York, one of the bureaus of NYCEM. He has 10 years of experience with community engagement for vulnerable New Yorkers. He's passionate about empowering individuals, especially older adults, to better prepare for and respond to emergencies through education, outreach, and inclusive planning. And his partner in crime today, who is Sofia Rivera Perez. She is the Health and Medical Planning Program Manager at NYCEM. Sophia has a master's in public health from NYU and has worked in the New York City emergency management and preparedness sector for 6 years. So you're in good hands today, and we will learn a lot from our partners at NYCEM. I'm going to give it to Angel now.
I'm going to, I took mine down, Angel, if you want to share your slides, and HCP and the other associations will monitor the chat for you, and we'll collect all the questions for the end.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Let me just pull up the right one. Okay. Can everyone see that big blue? Are you ready, New York?
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay, perfect, perfect.
I'm going to fade away into the background.
Right. Okay. Just a little quick test run here. Well, good. I was going to say morning, but we're 12 minutes into the afternoon. Okay. All right. I'm on the Zoom browser on my Internet Explorer, so I'm a little caught off guard because my Zoom app didn't work. So I'm a little all over the place when it comes to Zoom. If you're anything like me, I'm tired of Zoom. I'm zoomed out ever since 2020. But good afternoon, everyone. As was mentioned, my name is Angel Luis Perez. I'm representing New York City Emergency Management, a very specific program within New York City Emergency Management, and we'll learn a little more about that today. Just kind of want to get started and thank Eva and thank Carol for inviting us into this space to be able to have this important conversation with you all. And at the end of the day, the way I like to talk about emergency preparedness is this is just a conversation, okay? You're going to hear things that you maybe have thought of before, but you haven't implemented. And you might hear new concepts that are completely foreign and you don't like how that sounds, right? It might be a little challenging to hear. There's space for all of our emotions that arise within this presentation. So please don't feel whatever you feel. And if a question arises, you keep it to yourself. You utilize that chat box, or at the end, when there's Q&A, you ask it. Okay. Usually what happens in these presentations, and I'm sure Sophia can also talk to it, right? As government employees, we kind of get questions about things that don't necessarily fall in our area of auspice. Don't let that stop you from asking the question. Okay. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you I don't know. And if I might know someone that can, right, we can connect. So I just want to set a safe space for all of us to begin this conversation in which we'll hopefully learn something. Okay. So let's jump right into it. So, New York City emergency management. If I asked each and every one of you, how long has New York City emergency management been around for? Some of us, under the sound of my voice, would say, I don't know, it sounds like a new agency, but we've been around for over 2 decades, right? Longer than that, honestly. But we were commissioned as an agency after September 11th. So that was a little more than 2 decades ago. But our mission, every bureau, every program, every employee at NYCEM, their mission is to help New Yorkers before, during, and after emergencies through preparedness, education, and response. That's the reason why we do what we do, the method to all of our madness. These presentations are all about preparedness and education so that you as an individual and as a care provider can respond well, right? One of my favorite sports quotes, maybe you've heard of it, is if you stay ready, you never have to get ready, right? And if that's true on the basketball court, that's even more true with emergency preparedness, right? So, before I kind of jump into our 3 steps, these 3 steps you are going to have memorized by the time this forum is done. My goal is to etch these 3 steps in your mind. I want you to wake up one night and just hear these 3 steps. Okay. Not necessarily my voice, but I want these 3 steps to be so etched in your brain. Okay. Let me tell you a little bit about the Community Engagement Bureau within NYCEM. Okay. NYCEM has over 300 dedicated employees that come to work and have their specific area of auspice that keep New Yorkers safe and educate New Yorkers. And we work in tandem very closely with departments like the OHMH, the Department of Environmental Protection, the Parks Department, Con Edison, right? Health and hospitals, which you'll hear from my colleague Sophia in a couple of minutes, right? The Community Engagement Bureau is made up of 3 similar but distinct programs, okay? All for, outward facing in the community, building community to help folks respond to the types of emergencies that can plague New Yorkers, okay? We'll talk about that in a little bit as well, right? The first program is the program that I represent specifically, which is called Ready New York. Ready New York is the public education campaign of the agency to educate New Yorkers, regardless of age, language barrier, faith, on how to prepare themselves, their families, their loved ones for emergencies. This is actually what we call individual preparedness. Okay. So a lot of what you'll hear today is individual preparedness, right? Now, all of you under the sound of my voice, whether it's professionally or personally, you are probably responsible for somebody, right? There's somebody you take care of, right? Whether it's at work, whether it's at home, or whether it's yourself, right? So there's a lot that you're going to learn there. You'll be challenged by. And again, there may be some things that you kind of already thought about, and we'll just give you language for it, right? So that's what Ready New York does. We go out into the communities as far as Staten Island, as far as Riverdale and educate folks. The following two programs are equally as important, and their work sometimes isn't as well known as Ready New York. The second program is called Community Preparedness, right? So if individual preparedness is something that Ready New York does, community preparedness is literally just that, right? It's casting a wider net in order to help folks in a community respond to emergencies. So what does that look like, right? Community preparedness has different cohorts in different neighborhoods in New York City, and they work with those cohorts to come up with community emergency plans, right? There's specific neighborhoods that are more susceptible to things like flooding, right? Different types of flooding, right? We won't get into that too much today, but you have flash flooding, you have coastal flooding, right? Community preparedness really works to identify a network of organizations, whether they're churches, nonprofits, for profits, that can respond and help that community if there was a pretty serious event in that community. So it's really great work. It's honestly, yeah, my colleagues in community preparedness are fantastic. I could go on a long time talking about what they do, but I won't, because that's not what we're here for. I just want you to know they exist. Now, the third program you, on some level, might be familiar with, because you might have, seen someone in your neighborhood or walking in another neighborhood that has a forest green shirt, which is my favorite color. So for me, it's hard to miss. A forest green shirt that says NYC CERT, right? Or they'll have a hat that says NYC CERT. But CERT is an acronym for Community Emergency Response Team Volunteers. And CERT, what they do is they train individuals to be able to help with events and certain deployments in their specific neighborhoods. So for myself, I live in Washington Heights. If I was a CERT member and there was a significant community event, maybe a parade, maybe a marathon up here, right? CERT can get deployed to help first responders, right? Either with low level things like blocking off streets, helping direct traffic, things like that, right? And even high level emergencies, CERT can be deployed to help with. CERT members get even trained on how to respond to like nuclear emergencies, right? I mean, that's so high level, right? But that just goes to show you the type of training that these volunteers get, right? So the three programs, Ready New York, Community Preparedness, and CERT, right? 3 is our magic number here. So the Ready New York, the Community Engagement Bureau operates in 3. Let's talk about the 3 steps of emergency preparedness. Now, there's wisdom in making a plan, having your supplies, and staying informed. If a hurricane is going to be hitting the city in about 48 hours, you need to have a plan of where you're going to go. If you're going to ride the storm out at home, are others in your family are going to come ride the storm out at home? Are you going to ride it out in your business together, right? What supplies will you need? Do you have enough in case you can't go back outside for X amount of hours or days after the storm, right? Do you have the stuff that you need in case there is a power outage because of that storm, right? And then where are you getting your information from, right? Those are the 3 steps of emergency preparedness. I use this specific example of a hurricane, but it could be a brush fire that causes you to not be able to evacuate from your home because it's right outside of your building, right? And now you have to shelter in place until this is resolved, right? There's a number of issues that as New Yorkers, we face on a daily basis. And so if you stay ready, you never have to get ready, right? When the emergency comes your way, that is not the time to start thinking about these concepts. It's already too late, right? You can wing it and, chances are you'll be fine. But there are certain emergencies, right? You can't wing and be fine. That's just the reality of this, right? So let's talk a little bit more about these in detail, okay? When you want to make a plan, you need a My Emergency Plan booklet from Ready New York that is free for all New Yorkers. I mean, even if you don't live in New York and you want one and you want to see how we do things, it's also free to you too. And later on down the slides, we'll have a chance or you'll have a chance to kind of scan the screen for the QR code. It'll take you to the digital link. I'll also place a few links later that you can access some resources that we have. But this plan has about 22 pages of information in it. Out of those 22 pages, there's about 6 or 7 that require you to write something in the book, just so you can have it in one centralized location. On page 5 of the My Emergency Plan, it gives you the opportunity to have health and life-saving information all in one place. Things such as, do you have any allergies, whether they're medicinal or nutritional? What is your blood type, right? How many of us still know our blood type, right? A lot of people don't, right? What's your eyeglass prescription, right? Some people don't even know their most eyeglasses have the prescription on them, right? Having all of that stuff in one centralized location can be crucial, because a lot of us probably have that spread out, maybe different documents, some in the back of our minds, right? But having it written down could be beneficial to you, right? Depending on the situation you find yourself, right? Some of the considerations the My Plan gives as well, and we can talk a little bit about this when we get into winter weather, is having a transportation plan in case the subways and the buses are not running. Now, we all know that MTA is a hard-working organization, right? So we're not talking about on the weekends when there's construction, right? Although that could be something you take into account, right? But let's say in the event of a major storm, right, that causes New York City to be declared into a state of emergency, right? The buses and the trains, all under MTA, will stop running 8 hours before that storm comes, right? Accessoride along with it will stop running, right? You want to be thinking about what to do, right? Especially for some of us, because of our profession, right? You might not be able to not report to work, right? Maybe you get off 4 hours before the storm comes, right? But by then the trains have already stopped running, right? And if you don't want to take $100 Uber because Uber jacks up the prices, right? What do? You need to think about these things beforehand, right? I'm grateful that, when I was young, going on the train, my mom would make me look at the map and like quiz me, like, okay, well, how do you get to this neighborhood? What trains get you to that neighborhood, right? A lot of us, right, don't do that anymore. We have the power of our phones, and our phones are great resources. Don't get me wrong, right? The world would not be where it is if it wasn't for this technology, but we can't be completely dependent on that at all times, right? We still need to know how to get to and fro and think about these things before the emergency comes, right? So, in the plan as well, it gives you the opportunity to, one of the considerations it has is if you are someone that has a disability, access, or functional need, right? To think through how to communicate your needs, right? In case you ever need to evacuate, if you ever need, help from, medical professionals, right? If you live life in the unique way that you do, how do you communicate the help that you need, right? I always tell folks, flashcards are undefeated, right? Flashcards will never steer you wrong. If you know someone that that maybe is nonverbal, right? Flashcards are a great way to communicate your needs in that way, right? Knowing when and how to evacuate is really important. Let's just, use the example of knowing how to evacuate in a fire, right? If you live in a high-rise buildings, and we know that high rises are buildings that have 7 stories and higher and don't have fire escapes, right? If you have to evacuate, there are signs on every elevator that say, don't take the elevator in case of a fire, right? But a lot of us don't know that, right? Especially if you're someone that has a disability, access, and functional need. How am I going to be able to evacuate without taking the elevator, right? So you'd have to think about sheltering in place, right? Calling 911, saying that you can't evacuate, right? Putting we've all seen in a movie or a show, putting a wet and moist towel under your door so no smoke comes in, right? making sure that the windows in your apartment are closed, right? In case there's any smoke coming in from the outside of the building, right? But knowing when and how to evacuate is super important, okay? And I'll come back to this specific touch point in a little bit when we talk about evacuations, okay? Shelters and service centers, right? I mentioned this earlier. If New York City is in a state of emergency, right, you won't have to look hard to find that in any news outlet. Okay, I'll give you a probably one of the greatest resources you can have for emergency alerts at the end of my presentation before I hand it over to Sophia. But this will be all over social media. This will be all over the news. You will likely get alerts on your phone as well. But shelters and service centers will be opened up, right? If you want to ride out the storm, especially a hurricane or another superstorm, right? And on our website, we have a hurricane evacuation zone map as well. You could even go on Google and just type in hurricane evacuation map, and it'll take you to the digital map where you can put in any address, any zip code, and it'll tell you what zone you live in and what are the evacuation centers closest to you. Okay. I'll put links for that at the end as well, right? Just so you guys can have it open in your tab, right? But all of the digital resources that we have, except I think one or two that were discontinued physically, we also have physical copies, right? So I can work with each and every provider that's here to be able to make sure that we send you a whole bunch of these resources so that you can be able to have it for your employees, for the folks that you care for. Okay. Now, we're going to talk really quickly about evacuation because gathering supplies is a two-sided coin. Okay. On the one hand, gathering supplies is about thinking, is partly thinking about what do you need if you have to go in a hurry, right? That's like my favorite dad joke about the go bag, right? A go bag is literally a bag you grab when you gotta go. Okay. So what needs to be in this go bag? All right. Now, the other side of that coin is if you have to shelter in place and you could not go outside, right? What do you need at home to be able to survive safely, whatever the hazard is that is causing you to have to shelter in place? There's a bunch of different hazards that can cause us to either have to evacuate or shelter in place. We're going to get into some of those in a bit, okay? But let me go back to gathering supplies. Now, if I were to ask folks, what do you see on the screen when it comes to when that's surrounding the bag? You would say a first aid kit, a toothbrush, toothpaste, a flashlight with batteries, a radio, right? I mean, how many folks still know what a radio looks like, right? You'll see a passport, cash, the My Plan, right? This is what we at Emergency Management think this is a great place to start. This is a great place to start thinking about what needs to be in your go bag. These are all suggestions. This is not law that all of these things need to be in your go bag, right? But there's wisdom in having a toothbrush and toothpaste in your go bag, right? I don't think I need to really explain that one, right? There's wisdom in having maybe a granola bar or a bottle of water in your go bag, right? But maybe I wouldn't put an entire first aid kit in my go bag, right? Because that has significant weight to it. But maybe I can put the hydrogen peroxide and the box of Band-Aids in the go bag, right? That's a way to kind of streamline that, right? I would say some of the things that you see on the screen that should be in everyone's go bag, regardless of what else isn't, is probably this My Emergency Plan. If you have a physical copy, once you fill it out, you keep it in your go bag. It would also be your important documents if you have them, right? Any cash, right? Cash should be small bills, right? I know some of us like to have big bills, right? But ones, fives, and tens are always best in the event, right? There's a blackout or a power outage. It's always easier to trade small bills, right? But those important documents as well You want to have those three things. Now, you tailor this go bag to your need and to your family's needs. If, in your apartment or in your home, there's 5 human beings, you want to have 5 go bags, right? Your kids should have a go bag. Your partner should have a go bag. Your in-laws that maybe get on your nerve, they need a go bag too. Okay. Every human being needs a go bag. Now, why do I say every human being needs a go bag? Is because one of the resources that we also have is an emergency plan for your pets. Now, if you're anything like me, right, I have 3 cats, right, and one of them is young. She's 3 months old. I'm looking at her as she sleeps, right. Sometimes I come in the house and she runs and hides because of the door slams, right. In the likely event of an emergency that I had to evacuate, I am not going to grab my go bag, grab each cat, put them in the carry-on, and then grab a go bag for each cat. You see what I'm saying? That might be a little difficult, right? Maybe if you have one dog, right, and you want to have a go bag for them, you can have that as well. And you could also just put some things for your pets in your go bag, right? I have some cat food and 3 extra blankets in my go bag right now because I know that, listen, it's going to be too much for me to have to carry all of these little animals, right? One is chunkier than the other. I'm not that strong, okay? But why do I bring all that up? Why do I use my life as an example to let you know that this is what it looks like? You tailor this to your needs, right? These are my needs, right? This is what I would need to do if I had to evacuate, okay? And I had to evacuate my apartment not recently because my carbon monoxide alarm was going off in the middle of the night. Was I a happy camper? Absolutely not. I was upset, right? Because I like my sleep. But that carbon monoxide alarm goes off. I'm not going to risk staying at home, right? So I literally had to grab my coat, my go bag. I put all 3 of them in the carry on. I didn't even wait, right? I went outside and I called 911, right? So you really never know when you'll need this stuff. Some of us listen, I get it. Some of us don't want to think about that uncomfortable feeling of having to evacuate our homes, our sanctuaries, right? Who wants to think about that, right? I just want to be safe, myself, my family. But the reality is, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? It's better to think about these things now than in the moment be kicking yourself because why didn't I think about that beforehand? Why didn't I just take the time to? We can avoid all that, right? If we just sit in a little uncomfortability of thinking, oh my goodness, how would I survive if this happened, right? You would be surprised how easy it is to come up with a plan, right? And in these conversations, in the digital plans, the physical plans, right? These considerations help you streamline that process, right? Of what to do, right? So again, every human being should have a go bag. If you would like to create a go bag for your pet as well, you can and should definitely do that. But if you have more than one pet, you can also add their stuff to your go bag. Okay. Now, a little bit about sheltering in place. We're going to talk about winter weather in a couple of minutes because 2 things. You guys all went outside today and you saw how cold it was. Okay. I left for the gym at 5:45 and I honestly almost turned back. I was like, I don't really want to be in shape that bad. Right. It's really cold. And for some of us New Yorkers, that cold and extreme weather can actually be deadly for us, right? In the same way extreme heat can be, right? So when we're in a polar vortex like we're in now, I remember last week, the National Weather Service released the news that, we're going to get the coldest weather on Earth. For me, I was like, what do you mean the coldest weather on Earth? Antarctica's right there, right? No, we're really experiencing some of the coldest weather on Earth right now in the Northeast, right? You should stay home if you have that flexibility and availability, right? And you don't need to go outside, right? This could be a good reason that you need to shelter in place, right? I'll kind of just say it now, but in general, right, there's a lot of New Yorkers that are vulnerable because of a bunch of different factors, right? Age. If you're 65 years or older, you can be very vulnerable to extreme weather, extreme heat, extreme cold, right? Toddlers and infants are particularly susceptible to the dangers of extreme weather, right? If you have chronic health conditions like heart and lung issues, right? The extreme cold is not your friend, right? Likely other issues, right? Like arthritis. This cold can be detrimental to you having a very good day, right? So maybe you want to ride out the extreme cold, right? Maybe you have family and friends that in page 2 of the My Emergency Plan, you wrote them down as your emergency contacts, right? That can help you and bring food over and can keep you home. Maybe they're younger, they're more able bodied, and they can kind of help you and be a buddy in that situation, right? And an emergency supply kit, sometimes I'll say an at-home kit. This is a small kit that you just keep at home with supplies that could help you if you could not go outside right now. If you're looking at the screen, you'll notice a few things, right? You'll notice water. You'll notice first aid kit. This is a gallon of water versus the bottle of water that was in the go bag, right? Also, there's an actual first aid kit, right? So maybe in the go bag, I don't put the full first aid kit, but in the emergency supply kit, I do, right? Some, extra batteries, a crank operated flashlight and radio, right? Some non-perishable food, right? You could even winterize some of this stuff, right? Put extra blankets, extra, socks, right? The real fuzzy socks that keep us warm in the winter, right? You can winterize this and also, summarize, not like summarize, but summarize this in the summer, right? Just created a new word. Let me coin it. All of these things, your go bag and your emergency supply kit, you can tailor it to the weather, right? Tailor it to your needs. But I'm going to leave you with 2 questions, right? That might potentially help you. And again, some of these are not uncomfortable. Some of these are uncomfortable, right? If you're on the journey to get your go bag started, stand in the middle of your home and ask yourself, if I had to leave here in 45 seconds, what do I need in this bag? Okay. Chances are, whatever comes to your head, maybe the first few things are probably what you need. After that, once you start looking at the TV, you start looking at the PlayStation 5, it's like, okay, no, don't put that in there, right? You're going to have to leave that, right? But then equally, if I could not leave my home for 5 to 7 days, what would I need, right? Besides food, what would I need, right? COVID-19 taught us none of us have enough toilet paper, right? But outside of that, what do I need, right? What does my family need, right? What do my pets need, right? So those are the 2 questions that I think would be helpful to kind of get you started on your journey of building your go bag and your emergency supply kit. Now, before I kind of jump into winter weather, I'm almost done. I'm more than 70% done with my side of things before I kick it off to Sophia. But staying informed is honestly maybe the most crucial step in the 3 steps of making the plan, gathering supplies, and staying informed, because you can have a plan, you can have your supplies, but what are you preparing for if you don't have the right information, right? Like I always tell my mom, like, listen, Facebook is great for gossip. You want to know what happened the other day on 90 Day Fiance, right? You and your friends are talking about it. That's the place to go, right? Not for emergency messaging, right? Like, oh, is it going to rain? I didn't see it on Facebook, right? I'm always like, Ma, that's not the place to find that out, right? So other than the news, right, where can you get important information at the palm of your hand? You can download Notify NYC. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about Notify NYC, and I'll come back to this slide. Okay, but Notify NYC is New York City's official official public messaging system. A little tongue twister right there. Okay, you can get verified information about important city service and significant events happening in your neighborhood, right? However you sign up for Notify NYC, whether you download the app, whether you call 311 and they help you get subscribed to the app, whether you text the Nixle that I'm going to go back to in a minute, all of this is free. There's no cost. There's no roaming charges. There's not, listen, if it's for free, it's for me. This is probably one of the greatest free things you're going to get. And it's Christmas time, right? So this is my Christmas present to everybody. Please download Notify NYC. You will not regret this. Okay. You can receive customized alerts for your neighborhood. You can also receive alerts for up to 5 different zip codes in the city. Okay. Now let me go to right here to show you the different types of emergency messaging that you can receive. So as you can see on the screen, it's not just crime, right? Because I've heard that Notify NYC people will say, oh, it's like the Citizens app. I mean, not really. Anybody with a phone can go and say, you know, there's lions and tigers and bears in the hallway of the Dunkin' Donuts on 52nd Street, right? That's not verified. This is all, every alert that you get is vetted and verified, right? Before it's ever sent out to you, right? That's what makes this completely different, right? So any mass transit disruptions, any planned events in your neighborhood, any weather emergencies, you get that information, whether it's by call or whether it's by text or on the app, okay? You can also get all of these alerts in every single language you see on the screen: Arabic, Korean, Polish, Russian, Spanish, Urdu, Yiddish, Chinese, French, Haitian Creole, Italian, right? We even have the option for ASL, right? Now, this is important to know because I just want to set expectations. The app is only available in English. So far, it's only available in English. However, I'm going to kind of go back to this slide over here, right? Not this one, right? So you can, if you want to download the app, you can scan the QR code that's on the screen. But an easy way to also get signed up with Notify NYC is to text Notify NYC to 692-692, and you will be subscribed to Notify NYC via text. You can do the same thing by calling 311, right? And when you finally get through, you can say, hey, I'd like to subscribe to Notify NYC, right? And you can also choose between getting your notifications by text or by phone. Okay, they'll kind of ask you the same questions that they would on the app, right? What's your zip code? Things like that, right? So I can come back to these slides at any time. So don't feel, oh, you're moving forward, you're moving too fast. Don't worry, I can come back to these slides. Okay. So again, text Notify NYC to 692-692. You'll reply with the zip codes for, you know, work, you know, home, school, right? Your significant others, right? You know, call 311, right? It's a really easy process, especially if you call 311. Once you get through to them, you know, they'll sign you up. They won't steer you wrong. You can also follow Notify NYC on all of the socials, Twitter, X, you know, Facebook. And you can also visit the website that's on the screen now. I believe the QR code will actually take you to the website. Okay. So remember that I can come back to these, right? So before we get into talking a little bit about winter weather, again, the 3 steps: make a plan, gather supplies, and stay informed, right? Let me work backwards. Stay informed by signing up for Notify NYC. You're going to get such a customized experience to your neighborhood, the neighborhoods you care about, because you have loved ones in that neighborhood. It's going to make it easier for you in the likely event of an emergency to know what to do because you have the right information, right? Having the right information is paramount for you responding well, okay, to regardless of the situation, right? Planning ahead, writing your plan in the emergency plan, right? Your My Emergency Plan booklet, right? Whether it's digitally or physically, right? Remember, I can work with every provider to make sure we get you these physical resources, okay? You can also visit the website on.nyc.gov/make a plan to download the digital version. I'll put in that link later as well. But planning ahead isn't just about having your emergency plan, where you're going to go, who you're going to call, how you're going to get there, right? It's also knowing what supplies you need for the moment. If you have to evacuate, if you have to shelter at home, only you can answer that question for yourself, for your household, for your family. What supplies will you need, right? So we're going to kind of move on to all mourn that it's not warm anymore. At 4:15 p.m. when we're already sleepy and tired, now it's 20 degrees, right? Winter weather is here, right? And in case you haven't noticed, right, these winters, they're getting colder, right? They're getting colder. It's causing more problems for us as New Yorkers. So we at the New York City Emergency Management, from December 1st to March 1st, we're in what we call the winter weather campaign, where we are aggressively pushing winter weather messaging to vulnerable New Yorkers so that you can know not only what to do, but you can know how to keep yourself, your family safe. And again, a lot of you under the sound of my voice, part of your responsibility is taking care of others that take care of others. You can't take care of others if you can't take care of yourself, right? You ever notice in like these emergency movies, right? Or even when you're on a plane, right? What do they say? When the oxygen mask comes down, put yours on first. You can't help others if yours isn't on first, right? So we do have to take care of ourselves, and we do have to know what to do in the likely event of a blizzard, of extreme cold, so that we can care for others well, right? So I don't need to tell you all of this because you're New Yorkers like me. You know how much of a headache the winter weather can bring, right? Disruptions to your utility, to MTA, the cold weather and storms can cause down trees, right? That can also cause power outages, right? Down trees can fall on power lines. That can cause outages in your neighborhood, right? That can fall on cars. That can fall on, whoever, right? Flooding as well can also happen, right? If it snows a lot, right? Once that snow melts, right, you can experience some localized flooding. If the catch basins in your area aren't clear. Also, during the winter, there's a significant increase in fires and carbon monoxide poisoning, which is why I mentioned when I heard that alarm, and this was about 3 weeks ago, I'm not taking no chances. I got to go, right? And we'll talk a little bit about why there's an increase in fires and carbon monoxide poisoning, okay? So, again, the 3 steps, right? Make a plan, gather supplies, stay informed. That's true in winter weather, as it's true for coastal storm season, right? Where storms can cause coastal flooding. That's flooding from the river, from the ocean coming inland, right? That's true in extreme heat, right? Where we also might not be able to go outside, but there are other places where we might be able to go other than our home if we don't want to rack up our Con Edison bill, that serve as cooling centers and cool spaces, right? But the commonality is you need to have a plan. Where are you going to go? How are you going to get there, right? Can I get there? Can anyone help me get there, right? During the winter weather, be prepared to shelter in place, right? Something that you can do as well with your emergency contacts, right? Again, that's on page 2 of the My Emergency Plan. Oh no, excuse me, that's page 3, right? Okay, it's one of the first 4 pages, right? The first 2 are like an introduction. Once you flip that, it's page 3, right? It'll talk to you about your emergency contacts, right? Maybe ride the storm out together. I've done that before. During Sandy, I rode the storm out with my aunt who's in a motorized wheelchair, right? Because God forbid anything happened, I'm young and able-bodied enough, I can just pick you up and run, right? But the goal was at least we're together, right? You're not alone, I'm not alone, right? So be prepared to shelter in place, whether it's by yourself or with, another family friend, another family, right? And listen to the travel bans, okay? I know sometimes, it might happen. You hear it on the news. Hey, it's going to be 15 degrees. If you don't have to go outside, really don't go outside. These travel bans aren't given lightly. Okay. So you know yourself, you know your needs, make the right call. Right. And again, sign up for Notify NYC, text Notify NYC to 692-692. Download the app on the Google Play Store and the App Store, or call 311 to get signed up for it. Okay. Uh, Also, let's talk a little bit about winterizing your supplies, right? So you can add blankets, warm socks, and gloves to your go bag, but also do the same thing for your supply kit, right? Your at home kit, right? And again, you want to make sure you're stocked up with whatever your needs are for 5 to 7 days, right? In case there's a storm, if you get snowed in, if there's a power outage, right? If there's a power outage, this is where the wisdom in having different emergency contacts in different parts of the city help, because if I live in Washington Heights and my mother lives in the Bronx, right? If my area is experiencing a power outage, I know hers isn't, right? Because we're not on the same grid, right? We're not on the same electrical grid, right? So there's wisdom if you have those people that you know and trust that you can rely on, right? Don't all be in the same neighborhood, right? Or in the same building, right? Because if everybody's in the same building and that whole building lost heat, right? You guys would just be cold together, right? But there's wisdom in having people spread out throughout the city that can help you, right? So you want to winterize your supplies, okay? Also, I'll say this, and I know it's on the next slide too. We know and we understand that in the last couple of years there are a lot of people who have come to New York City. New York City is a sanctuary city, right? There's some people that come from certain countries that have never experienced cold. I mean, it's cold for me, and I know the cold is coming. I can imagine like not knowing what 20 degrees has ever felt like, how cold that probably is. So if you see someone, if you're comfortable, if again, it's all about if you're comfortable. But if you see someone that's like outside in a t-shirt and like pants, right? Like, approach them, talk to them, right? Again, if you are comfortable, right? Some folks really just don't know how to bundle up, right? Putting a long sleeve, a hoodie, a jacket, right? If you don't have like a coat, just layering up, right? Not having skin exposed for too long, right? That was one of the actual reasons, I saw on the news today why they were saying, hey, if you don't have to go outside, don't go outside, right? This is so cold, it can damage your skin if you're outside for more than 15 minutes, right? Some folks don't know that, right? If you see someone that's experiencing homelessness, right, call 311, right? During Code Blue, the Department of Homeless Services sends crews to where these individuals are and offers them help, right? That's one way you can be a good neighbor, right? Another way you can be a good neighbor, right, is by calling 311 to report those dangerous conditions, right? If you see the ice dangling from the entrance of your building, of your apartment complex, right, and no one's kind of cleaned it, call 311, right? Um, there is wisdom in you being a good neighbor, right? I believe that community there's power in community to really change the world when we link arms together. So be a good buddy, right? During this time of the year, right? I have a lot of older adults that have a disability that live in my building. I know this morning I checked on two of them, right? Hey, you good? Like, do you need anything from outside? Right? I don't do that because I have to. I don't do that because I work here. I do that because I would want someone to do that for my mother. I would want someone to do that for me if I was, 99 and couldn't go outside, right? So if you have that ability, if you have that ability and availability, be a good neighbor, right? Check on your neighbors, right? Now, this is always fun, and I got about a few minutes before I kick it off to Sophia, uh, since I know you guys are tired of me already. But as a city representative, everybody comes to us and it's like, hey, my streets are dirty, my pipes are rusted, right? But specifically with snow removal, you'll see on the screen that different agencies have a different area of auspice, right? New York City Sanitation, they clean the streets, crosswalks, and bus stops without shelters, right? Bus stops without the little glass, right? The Department of Transportation cleans bridges and overpasses, right? MTA cleans the entrance to the subways, right? But these city agencies all work in tandem to kind of salt and take care of their specific areas after a storm, right? So if let's say you live by Prospect Park and you're going into the park and you notice there's still a lot of snow that's preventing you from easily accessing that entrance, right? Call 311. Let them know that, right? Parks Department may have just have not gotten there yet, right? Maybe they're cleaning up different parts, but still let them know that, right? Still communicate that, right? But with snow removal, it's always good for folks to know who does what, okay? Because as you can see, New York City Emergency Management is not on this list, so we do not do snow removal. But again, it costs nothing to point to the people that do, right? Now, in about 3 minutes, my goal is to convince you to never plug a space heater into an extension cord again, ever again, right? It's actually one of the most dangerous things you can do. Now, I will say I have been guilty of this in my life. Before I worked in the field of emergency management, I'm like, oh yeah, it doesn't reach. Let me just get a little extension cord from the 99-cent store, right? But what ends up happening is that specific device, let's just use that space heater or portable air conditioner, requires a level of voltage, right? That those extension cords are not built to give, right? So when that device is extracting more than that extension cord is able to give, right? What happens? Sparks fly, right? And nobody falls in love when those sparks fly. Okay, everybody's in danger, right? That can start fires, right? It's actually one of the leading causes of fires in the winter, right? Is improper usage of portable heaters, right? Space heaters, right? So if you have a space heater right now, if you are under the sound of my voice, you're guilty, and you right now have a space heater connected to an extension cord, shame on you. Okay, no, I'm joking, right? But now that you know that, right, just do better, right? Unplug it, plug it directly into the wall where it can get that necessary voltage, right? You also want to do a few things. Keep that space heater away from furniture, from drapes and curtains. Just you don't want it to like warm anything up and have an adverse effect. All right. Some devices will also say don't use indoors, right? Really heed to the warnings on those devices that you buy, right? Because if you buy a space heater that says don't use indoors and you're using it indoors, there's a reason why it says don't use indoors, right? And again, we're all guilty of this stuff, right? A lot of us buy things and don't look at the instructions, right? But with space heaters and portable devices like this, it can really be detrimental to your safety and the safeties of others in your home, right? Be careful if you have young children and even pets that you leave those space heaters around. I have a space heater. I don't always use it, primarily because I know my cats get enamored by it and I don't need them touching it. I don't need them investigating what that is, right? So just use some wisdom when using that space heater. As well, this is very important. Do not, if you lose heat in your home, outside of calling 311, that's what you should do. What you should never do is use your stove or oven to heat your home. That can cause carbon monoxide poisoning. Okay. And carbon monoxide poisoning is called the silent killer because you don't smell it, right? You just start getting lightheaded, you start getting dizzy, right? You see the picture I'm trying to draw, right? So uh, some of those things, maybe some of us, have done them in the past, but they can actually be very deadly. So, please, if you lose heating in your home, call 311. Think about what your options are. Do you have a buddy in a different part of the city, an emergency contact that you can kind of ride out the duration of that event with? Okay. But please plug those space heaters into the wall and do not use your stove and your oven to heat your home. Okay. So instead of opening it here for questions,
A- a-
I
Actually, Angel, we just
yeah,
had a few on your materials. If you don't mind getting them in now,
yeah, let's go
do you
ahead.
mind? They're just kind of a couple quick questions.
Yeah, come on, let's do it.
I know we were going to wait till the end, but someone wants to know how often do you update your go bag, like water freshness and batteries and stuff?
That's a really good question. Things like batteries, you don't really need to update them that long, right? Um, if you don't use it, it's not gonna, especially if they're in the case, they'll be fine. That'll be fine for a few years. Anything that's perishable, if you put in like granola bars or even some food, you just want to make sure you know the expiration date. Um, water, I would probably change our water maybe like every 6 months. And just because it'll kind of taste nasty, it's not necessary. I don't know that it necessarily has an adverse effect if you drink it. But water that gets hot and cold is just going to taste nasty.
Right.
But yeah, I would say at the start and end of every season, just check in on your go bag, see if you have to adjust it for the season that's coming.
That's great advice because you might want to throw a blanket in for the winter, take that out for the summer, and raincoat for the summer, whatever. So
Right.
that's a great all round twice a year when you change your smoke alarm batteries, right?
That's right. That's right. And I don't know if you guys can hear it. I
Yes,
have
we
to change
can, and
mine
I think it's
today.
the most ironic thing that happened this week.
I have to change mine today. It just started beeping like 5 minutes before I logged on. I'm like, oh my God, I have to go buy batteries. So again, this is a process for all of us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's
Shows you're
no,
human.
that's it,
Angel,
right?
you know. We had another question about Notify New York City about
Yeah.
boroughs.
Yes.
Um, People can sign up for more than one borough, all the boroughs. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you can sign up for up to 5 zip codes anywhere throughout the 5 boroughs. So if you live in Upper Manhattan, like I do, and let's say your partner lives in Flatbush, Brooklyn, your father lives in Highland Park, Staten Island, and your mom lives in Astoria, Queens, right? You can get messaging for any of those zip codes, right? Any of those boroughs, right? When you sign up for Notify NYC, you would just also sign up for the messaging to those zip codes. Does that make sense?
Great. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And I think New York State's 33311 also allows you to just punch in the boroughs, but I don't want to usurp Notify New York City because that's far more local. And when it comes to
Yeah,
emergency management, we love hyper local, right?
that's
One
right.
last question. What about like a larger gauge extension cord or a more heavy duty extension cord for a space heater when you need one if you don't have an outlet nearby?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say as long as whatever the watts or voltage, it escapes me which one is it. As long as that extension cord is able to, give that device the wattage or the voltage that it needs,
Okay.
sure. I would say, listen, just don't. Why do that? Just plug it into the
Right.
wall, right?
Take it a chance. Great.
But if you need to, I would just say, yeah, just make sure whatever that device needs, that extension cord is able to provide it.
Okay, great. We'll you can switch up your slides and put
All right.
Sophia. She's got probably, I think, 20, 30 minutes to talk or 5 minutes or 6 minutes. No, I'm joking.
I was going to say my presentation's under 10, just to.
Oh, okay. No, you're
Angel's
here for
always
another
hard to.
hour, Sophia. It's another
Yeah,
hour.
I know.
Well, we have a lot. We have a lot of stuff to cover too. I can't wait to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm just going to share my slides. Give me one moment.
While you're doing that, something to think about, Angel. Someone wants to know if you have flyers to hand out when an emergency occurs for the community. So just give
Okay.
that some thought and then we could cover it later. Take it away, Sophia Rivera Perez.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Sophia Rivera Perez. I'm a health and medical planning program manager here at NYCEM. I'm in a bit of a different bureau than Angel. I'm actually under the Planning and Resilience Bureau. And I just want to caveat before I start that a lot of the information that you're going to see is just background information about NYCEM, as well as my unit. So if I brush over certain things, it's because either Angel covered it, and also I just want to make sure that that's gotten across to people, because we deal with a lot of things that you probably won't deal with in the grand scheme of stuff. So let's get started. So I know Angel said this earlier, but just to reiterate, New York City Emergency Management is committed to helping New Yorkers before, during, and after emergencies through preparedness, education, and response. We always like to tell people that we're the communication body, and when something happens, we will most definitely be there. And next, just some breakdown as to what NYCEM does. So we monitor for all potential emergencies, we coordinate citywide response activities, and overall, we increase public awareness and outreach. Our goal every year is to just make sure that we're getting the right information to New Yorkers during emergencies, but also during evolving incidents. And so I don't want to belabor the point because Angel did a fantastic job of explaining all of our public-facing initiatives, but again, a plug for Notify NYC. It's a fantastic resource and it's really helpful all year round. And so next, we always like doing interagency coordination breakdown. This is our bread and butter here at NYCEM. We like to start off with our watch command. So watch command maintains citywide situational awareness. It doesn't matter what time of year, it's 365, 24/7, rain or shine. These are people that you will always interact with. So they coordinate agency response to emerging incidents within New York City. They utilize our citywide interagency coordinators, which are CICs. These are really our boots on the ground during an emergency or during an incident. So if they need help with something, they call us back at NYCEM and say, hey, we'll need X, Y, and Z unit to respond to this. NYCEM is also the home for the Emergency Operations Center, so the EOC. This is activated to respond to major emergencies, incidents, or events. So that could be COVID-19 or if there's a coastal storm. It's basically a centralized location. Before COVID, it wasn't a hybrid model, but now we use teams very often so that we could pull in the right people for an incident. And so next, getting to the micro level, which is health and medical, my unit. So we work with New York City, state, federal healthcare associations, healthcare facilities, and emergency medical services to prepare for and respond to incidents in New York City, which is a mouthful. I always tell people that if there is something going on in the public health sector, we will be a part of it and we'll be the ones that people reach out to. And this is just a very basic breakdown of what we coordinate for citywide planning efforts. We do a lot of things for shelter programs and for burden surge response plan. This is what I was saying earlier. A lot of these things you don't have to worry about, but know that we work with a lot of external partners to make sure that if something happens, we're prepared in New York City. And this is just another slide for our citywide health and medical planning. We do isolation and quarantine planning. We do the healthcare evacuation center. So this is something that's turned on during a coastal storm. And if a facility needs help with evacuation, we'll be the ones that coordinate it. I'm not sure if anyone was a part of this sector a couple of years ago, but we helped with the Woodhull evacuation back in 2023. And so on top of that, our bread and butter is to support healthcare facility preparedness. So we can support no-notice healthcare facility evacuation, like I said, with Woodhull. We have an emergency radio communication program. So that's utilized if any of our communication towers go down, we can usually reach out to pertinent partners. We also have the healthcare consequence management cell. This is something that's utilized during large events. So if you think of like the New York City, the New Year's ball drop or the Thanksgiving Day parade, we make sure that we have a sector for our partners to come together so that if anything happens, we'll be prepared. We're also in charge of NYCEM's medical logistics cache, which is something that we monitor throughout the year. And this is just a list of some of our local partners as well as federal and state. These are people that we interact with all the time. So if something happens, we could pull in the right people and it gets the ball rolling. I know it looks like quite a lot. It is. So this is just a breakdown of the NYCEM Health and Medical ESF. So I'm in the unit, but our ESF, which is an emergency support function, I always try and not do the alphabet soup because we use those a lot in emergency management. Our ESF is for the healthcare sector. So that means if something impacts public health in the city, we're the ones who will try and coordinate response. This, of course, is not done in a silo. We have plenty of partners throughout the city. And we could work on assessment of public health needs or health surveillance or mass fatality management. It truly depends on the situation that's happening. And this is a super simple breakdown of our EOC. So when something happens, these are partners that fall under our umbrella and we coordinate with. So I always like to tell people that there's so many things that happen in New York City, and usually it won't even hit the news. We always make sure that we'll be responding in the background. So yes, I'm the point person that if anything hits the news, my family will blow up my phone being like, what's going on? So yeah, it's very interesting, but it's definitely something I like to remind people of, that there's always something going on. And so next with the health and medical ESF, as I said before, we do all the public health response. And one thing that I always like to get across is that we usually work with utility concerns. So think like power, water, and gas impacts to facilities. We respond to things like COVID and MPOX and other man-made events, but usually this is what we respond to most often. We also help with evacuations and we help with public safety agency coordination. So think NYPD or FDNY, these are partners we interact with very often. We also serve as the safety officers for the NYCEM incident management team. And so this is the last slide. I know I blew through that really fast, but this is some background. These are just some of the past activations that we've had since 2017. We've had quite a few things that we've responded to, but it could be man-made or it could be something like a coastal storm. We will always have some type of support in it. And I know that they're releasing slides after this, but this is our email in case you guys have any questions. This is something that we always monitor, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sophia. I didn't see any new questions in the chat, but I do want to ask Angel if there are flyers. One of our attendees asked if there are flyers to hand out in the community. You had, I know you had one slide with photos of materials and stuff. Did they just reach out to you, or is there a general mailbox you could throw in the chat?
Yeah, so I would ask the person that asked the question to kind of expound a little bit. Because yeah, what we really do is give folks these resources so that they can respond well, especially like on the individual preparedness side. But in an emergency, when it occurs in your neighborhood, right, first responders would be the ones that are on site.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess yeah, I'm just a little
Yeah. Yeah, well, our
unsure.
attendees are mostly home care and hospice
Yeah,
providers.
yeah,
So they are in the community all the time. So if you had
right,
materials that could be distributed to the community,
right.
they would be able to do that.
For sure. So
Um,
all of the materials that I kind of like showed today, my emergency plan, I briefly talked about the hurricane evacuation zone map.
mhm.
Those can be resources that we send. And I know Carol and Eva, I'll work with you. We can send them to however many addresses we need to, so that folks can have that.
Okay.
But in terms of if there's a significant event happening in the neighborhood, we wouldn't be giving out flyers. The best place to get that information from is Notify NYC.
Yeah, I don't think the person meant during an
Yeah,
event.
yeah,
Just general pamphlets or,
right.
materials, printed materials that they don't have to go online to get, I think is what the person was after. I've
Okay.
asked them to detail it, but we do have a couple more questions. Eva wants to know if Sophia could explain no notice versus notice situations for attendees.
Sure. So when you think of no notice, think of like a weather event. Think of a storm. We do get some days before, but usually it's a bit of a shorter time. When you think of longer notice, it's more so events. So my team is really looking towards summer 2026 because FIFA is the hot topic right now, and we always want to make sure that our partners kind of know what's going on or what to expect. So on that end, we usually have to tell people like, hey, there's going to be a lot more people in the city. Or as Angel said earlier with MTA, there could be impacts to that. So the notice is usually with an event, and then no notice is something that we have to get things going faster. So
Great, thank you. And then I had a couple that are particular interest to our home care and hospice providers. Can you talk just for a minute or two about the special needs shelter program? Because when we have to evacuate our patients, they certainly all have special needs, and this would be something really good to know.
So the special medical needs shelter is actually something that came out of Hurricane Sandy, and it's meant for people that are they're usually, I'm trying to think of the right words to put this. They will have medical conditions that aren't bad enough to be in a hospital, but they do need support during an emergency like a hurricane. So they'll come to these shelters that are staffed by people at H&H, and we have multiple partners in that, and they're able to help people during the 2 or 3 days that they might need to be in a shelter. We haven't used this program since Hurricane Sandy. My boss is always saying we're waiting for the big one, but this is something that we always monitor. I also want to emphasize this isn't something that's utilized for, let's say, like nursing homes.
Right.
It came out of something that happened during Hurricane Sandy, but it's meant to support New Yorkers that they're not in a condition to be in a hospital, but they will need help from a medical provider during this time.
Which
I
is
could also,
exactly the population that we're serving, you know,
yeah,
so
and
so you're saying that it's something that is stood up on an needed basis. It's not something that, you know, if there's flooding in a neighborhood that somebody would be able to call somewhere and say, where can I go? There's nothing permanent stood up. Is
no,
that
this is usually
okay?
stood up during like a very large event. I could
Okay.
also send like a one pager to you guys just to see the basic
That
information
that
for
would
it.
be great. If you can send me the link, I will put it in the materials that we send to our attendees afterwards, or if you want to drop it in the chat, they could grab it there as well or do both. Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I'll
Um,
make sure to pull that up.
and then one more question, know your zone. I know Angel touched on that, but that's super important for folks, so I think a little bit more on that would be great. And then I think Al's got something.
Yeah, so so this is the way I'll describe it, right? Knowing your zone, I'm actually gonna pull up the map. I'm gonna pull up the digital map so you guys can see what it looks like. I'm a visual learner, so I think that'll always be great for people to see, right?
We have the means, so we might as well take advantage of it.
Yeah, yeah. Now let me just share my screen. Okay, here we go. All right, there we go. Okay, got it. So you guys can see my screen. This is the digital resource. Okay, so this resource is obviously more interactive than the pamphlet. The pamphlet, the physical resource will be in whatever language you prefer. But as you can see here on the digital resource, you can change it to whatever language you want, right? So let's just use English, right? And you view map, right? I'll just show you, right? Let me see.
Where's
Okay,
your house, Angel?
right. So this isn't where I live. Okay. This is not where I live. But you'll see right now that it immediately kind of just zoomed in on mine. It said it cannot determine a zone for my address because I only provided a zip code, right? But let me briefly explain what you're looking at. Okay. New York City is divided into 6 different zones. You kind of see these zones right here, right? Zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, zone 6. Zone 1, if we zoom out, is all in red. Okay. That's all underwater, right? We remember when we got our test back and the teacher used red pen, that means there was a problem, right? So zone 1 is all underwater, meaning zone 1 can and likely will receive damaging coastal flooding. Okay. Now, zone 6 are these parts of the city, if you're looking at the screen, that are more inland, right? So here, this specific neighborhood of Harlem, you have this part right here of Brooklyn, right? All of the white areas that you see on the map as well are also considered zone 6. This hurricane evacuation map was created from years of data from coastal flooding from different storms that we've received, right? That will allow us to put together a resource to show how far inland these flooding events will occur. Okay, so
Gotcha. Thanks.
yeah, no problem. So on it, you could put your address, you can put your zip code, it'll take you to it, right? It says here, this specific, building in this zip code is a zone 6, right? Even though it's likely on the water, that might be because it's up on a hill, right? So it's not going to really get flooded, right? But also on the right-hand side, you see the evacuation centers closest to me, right? Closest to me, right? Now, every single evacuation center that you see is accessible, right, for folks that have a disability, access, and functional need. So that's something that we've thought about prior to, right? Every kind of New Yorker needs access to these centers, right? But this is what it looks like. It's super easy to use. In the physical hurricane know your zone finder, the evacuation map, you can scan the QR code in the middle of the page and it'll bring you to this website. Okay. So I'm going to actually throw.
I put the link in the chat for folks
Okay,
too.
perfect. Carol, you are a lifesaver. Again,
I'm all about the links. I put Notify New York City in there too, if anybody wanted that.
Okay, perfect. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, please ask. Now that we have the time, again, you can access this in multiple languages. It's a free resource. You can put as many addresses, as many zip codes as you can. Likely you'll see right here, no matter what zone I click on, it says zone 1, no evacuation order currently in effect, right? Because we're not in a state of emergency, right? And I always stress that these evacuation centers that will open are only if we are in a state of emergency. Okay. Only if we're in a state of emergency. All right. And if you have any pets, any legal pets, okay, that language is very specific. Any legal pets you can bring with you. Okay. Why do I say legal? Because if any of us have a tiger, it's not coming inside to these evacuation centers. Okay. And I don't know if you remember that story from some years back where this man in Harlem had a tiger in his apartment. Okay. So New Yorkers are known to have some exotic animals. Okay. That's why we need to say only legal animals. Okay.
Thank you. I think Al had a question too.
I do. Thank you so much. And again, thank you for the awesome presentation. So one question really has to do with access for home care and hospice personnel when there are emergencies and there is a curfew or there are restrictions in travel. And very often what happens is that unless you are in the designated essential personnel category, you're not able to go and provide the proper support to patients. So a number of years ago, I think it was in 2017, perhaps, the governor signed legislation to really encourage and provide for a process whereby local emergency management plans could incorporate a process to include home care and hospice personnel in essential status. And I just wonder if you could just speak to that point for a moment about, about the access provisions that either are in place or could be put in place with further dialogue. And I want to make one comment, if I could, after you're done commenting on that. Either one of you, Sophia or Angel.
Sophia, is that you or is that me?
I think it's a little bit of me. I
Yeah.
actually asked my boss this question because I think Al, you had mentioned it when we were
I did.
talking offline, and he had told me that for anyone who's a healthcare provider, you should be allowed to get through even if a place is shut down. But I will definitely bring that back to my unit because that falls a little bit outside of NYCEM scope, but it's something that we know is an issue and it's something that we've brought up. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you so much for the follow-up. That would be terrific because one of the things that happens is that the workers are often intercepted by, it could be law enforcement or anybody that's trying to obviously protect the public by providing for these restrictions, and then they can't get to the patient. Looks like Al Villacara might have a comment on that point, or maybe a
Yep.
different point, Al.
Hi, Al.
Hi, everyone. No, I was coming on camera for another point. So sorry about that, Al. I
Please.
didn't mean to confuse anything.
No, that's okay. It's always great to see you, Al. I just wonder if I could
Likewise.
just make one follow-up comment, and thank you so much,
Please.
Sophia. Thank you so much, Sophia. So the follow-up comment is that what is often not very clearly understood is the level of need that exists in the in-home care among in-home care providers and health plans. Effectively that there are thousands of individuals that are at a level 1 status, a priority 1 status in as defined in the health department's nomenclature for responsiveness. And these are individuals that have to be served or they have to be evacuated. It's not like somebody can go 2 or 3 days without it. It's almost on a daily basis. So, and very often the emergency preparedness system, the response system, recognizes individuals that are on oxygen or depend on utilities, but don't recognize the full universe of those individuals that truly need daily care. And so that sort of goes kind of hand in hand with this notion of access and really the necessity for access. So again, double comment. Thank you so much for looking into that. And then the other thing would just be if we could work together to promote that level of awareness of the magnitude of the population that truly is in that priority 1 must see every day type status. So thank you very much. Al, I'm rolling over to you.
I have to throw in one sentence before we go to Al because I just want folks to know that that is the whole reason that we're doing these type of collaborative operations. And Fidel is instrumental in getting us all together and in front of the other sectors so that folks are more aware of the home care needs. Al.
Actually, sorry, Al, not to interrupt you. I have one follow-up question for other Al. When you say access, do you mean access to transportation for evacuation, or do you just mean access to resources for that community? I just want to clarify for when I
I
bring
would
it
say
back to my
really
unit.
in the first instance, I'm talking about access to the patient, to be able to get to that
Okay.
patient where they live and be able to properly minister. But the other things are also very, very important. I know that later on, as we move to another section of today's presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the TALs, the transportation assistant levels, and the updates to that. But yeah, access is in all those regards. But I'm speaking about it primarily in accessibility of the patients to this for the staff of the providers that are going to minister to them.
Great. I just want to make sure. Thank you.
All right, am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay, very
Okay,
good.
Alfie.
It's not so much a question as just a big shout out to everybody involved. It's great to see so many colleagues on this call, and a big thanks, of course, to Sophia and Angel, but to Carol and Ava and Fidel and everyone that helped to organize it. I just wanted to say how important all of this is. We just had, and again, I'm Al Villicara with the New York City Health Department. We were just having some internal conversation at the end of last week, and we were reiterating some of these same points, right? And all the engagement that we're talking about in the chat and talking about the patients and their families, right? But I think it really, really something that we can't lose is really our engagement with our staff on all of this, right? And the term that everyone's probably tired of hearing me say it, but it's so important, is personal preparedness leads to association preparedness. Personal preparedness leads to agency preparedness. Personal preparedness leads to facility preparedness, whatever that entity is, right? But how important that is, right? Because how do we keep the mission going, right? And how do we implement all of our strategies when everything hits the fan? We could have the best laid plans, but if we don't have the staff to implement them, it's not going to go very far, right? And so to tell our staffs, and listen, I'm the same way. Like, would I rather go to the movies, right? Or watch the next episode of the series I'm into, right? Or try a new recipe, or take some time to work on my personal and or family preparedness plan. We say, oh, I want to go to the movies, right? But taking a few minutes now is going to be imperative, right? Because the expectation is that our staff is going to be available to join our response, right? We can't put it all into motion if they're not available. And particularly then if you have young children at home, if you have older adults, family members with special needs, pets, as Angel alluded to, right? We have to have a game plan for all of this, right? Because if the association's saying, the expectation is you're part of our response and you've got all these things on your mind, you can't be present and be part of our response, right? And so taking that time is imperative. And I'll leave with just one last story because, again, Sophia and Angel, so I worked at NYCEM many, many moons ago. And I remember in the days before we were able to do some things virtually, being part of a response, and the expectation was you have to get to NYCEM, right, to be part of the EOC, and the subways weren't running, right, and they're like, well, Al, where are you? And I'm trying to figure out how to get from Midtown Manhattan to Brooklyn, where the EOC is located, and it was not a good feeling to try and figure it out on the fly, right? Because I just didn't take the bus. I took the subway, and now the subway's not working. And where's my personal preparedness plan now, right? I needed to work on this before everything hit the fan. And so, yes, and Eva says one last story before I leave. I couldn't resist, Eva. But no, I thank you for letting me chime in. This is incredibly important. Thanks so much to everyone involved. So please take it all to heart. Thank you.
We
Thank you, Al.
appreciate you showing up and chiming in. So thank you, Al.
Absolutely.
We've all
Thanks,
been
Al.
blessed to work with you these years, and we're gonna miss you a lot.
Thanks so much. I'll miss you likewise. We'll stay in touch. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
And I love the great conversation. We are going to just cover a few things for updates. Each association will take just say 3 minutes. Let me get my slides back up. Can you see that big slide? Nice introduction.
Yes.
Okay, great. So we're going to take just a couple of minutes each to talk about some updates and things you need to know in the emergency management world, and then we're going to open up the floor for any other topics that anybody wants to cover. So 3 to 5 minutes each. Here we go. Timer starts. I'm Carol. I'm going to start with respiratory illness season. Everybody knows that that is upon us. We cannot forget that COVID-19 is still a thing, even though flu season is here. There was a lull after September, and now the case counts are rising again. So COVID vaccinations are still safe, still effective. Remind folks that this is not a booster because a booster implies you are already vaccinated. These vaccines are for anyone, whether they've been previously vaccinated or not. It is not called an annual vaccine yet, but I imagine that that's coming down the road. So check with pharmacies. They administered something like 90% of the COVID vaccines over the course of the pandemic. So most of them are carrying whatever you need there. Insurance companies are generally covering the vaccines. If you bump up against something in New York State about your insurance, if you have your doctor send a prescription to the pharmacy, that might help with the coverage situation. Influenza. On December 2nd, the Commissioner of Health declared flu prevalent in New York State. Important to note that this is 2 weeks earlier than it happened last year, and last year was a pretty severe year for flu. While it's generally considered unusual to have two back-to-back bad years, there are some warnings coming from the experts that this could be a bad year. Part of that is due to a variant that's floating around out there that has caused about 1/3 of the global cases. It's not accounted for in our flu vaccine. As you know, you have to match, kind of ahead of time and try to predict what's out there. But the vaccines still are effective, reduce hospitalizations and severe illness. Don't forget that all of you that are licensed by Article 36, 28, and/or 40 of the state's public health laws, you are expected now that flu is declared to have all of your unvaccinated folks masked that are have contact with patients. So make sure that your policies and procedures have been activated. You ought to have that in your emergency preparedness binder, and as well as part of your normal policies and procedures. Vaccinate against flu or mask up. And those requirements are in effect until the commissioner declares flu is no more prevalent. Don't forget to keep track of everybody. You will need to report on those vaccines towards the spring. Finally, respiratory, we have pertussis. There's been a huge drop in vaccination rates for pertussis. We are seeing pockets of outbreaks, but they are not regionally secluded. So pertussis is kind of everywhere. The babies are particularly susceptible because they're not vaccinated very early. So make sure all your folks are aware of that. It's not a required vaccine for our licensed agencies, but you can protect the babies by making sure the adults all have their every 10 years pertussis vaccine, which is part of a tetanus combination Tdap shot. Finally, we remind you to always keep your health commerce system and information up to date. You are required to have a 24/7 contact. That doesn't mean call the switchboard and leave a message. That means somebody picks up the telephone. So by leaving your main number for your office and an extension number for your 24/7 contact, nobody's going to get through to you. Department of Health reiterates this to us probably every month to the associations that folks are not doing their duty and keeping those up to date. So make sure that those numbers are really, really reachable 24/7, because long delays result when the Department of Health can't reach you and it's an emergency. Comprehensive emergency management plan. If yours needs a little zhuzhing up, there is training available. We have a link on the last slide to go to you can get a template, tons of tools there that we worked really hard on for you guys. And then before I pass the baton to Eva, who's waiting in the wings to talk about a few more topics, I just want to share some of our projects that HCP is working on for the coming year for New York City providers. We will have 2 webinars on communication topics, which is always noted as a gap when we do our evaluations of what folks need. So please watch for those. One will be in March, one will be in April, talking about messaging on one and talking about personal protection devices, like so that if somebody can call for help when they're out in the field. And we are continuing our patient and staff educational series with some quick learning videos on emergency management topics. And there's some exciting stuff coming about H5N1 bird flu, but we're not going to talk about that today. So let's hear from Eva.
Thank you, Carol. I just have
Sure.
a couple of quick comments about the presentation. I wanted to thank Angel and Sophia again, but I also wanted to encourage providers who are required, and that's my gig, regulatory compliance. We are required to educate our patients individually about emergency preparedness and emergency management. And Angel and Sophia gave us some great tools today that would be wonderful in an opening packet or at an initial visit. So I just wanted to make a plug for that. I also wanted to say I have never been so popular on a webinar. I think there are 15 Eva Cohens on this webinar. I have tracked down about 7 or 8 of them. So if you are logged in as me, could you please remember to log in as yourself or just put a little message in the chat. Now for hospice provider updates, reminders, COVID did not give us much in the way of positive things, but what they did give us is the ability to do our face-to-face visits in a virtual way. And that has been extended. a couple of different times and is now set to expire on January 30th. So please pay attention. If we do not get an extension, and Hip Candies will certainly update you about that, you will need to do those face-to-face encounters in person beginning the next day after January 30th. So February 1st or January 31st. The other thing that COVID gave us was the ability to prescribe controlled substances using telemedicine, and that is also a flexibility that has been extended a couple of different times, 4 times actually, and is set to expire on December 31st. Please pay attention to that. My fearless leader, Jean Chirico, told me yesterday that that looks promising to be extended again, but something for hospice providers to keep an eye on. As Carol said, we do have some, Hip Candies has additional emergency management projects in the works for this budget period. And one of them is a hospice bed capacity survey, which we will be sending out via Monkey Survey to all hospice providers. There has been a lot of change post-COVID and during COVID in the number of residential and or GIP or general inpatient care beds. We really want to get a handle on that. That is something that is vital to know in an emergency management way where those beds are in our individual communities. So we will be sending out a survey and try to get a handle on that post-COVID. So it's time. The other thing that the other project that Hip Candies is undertaking this budget period is a staff presentation at the New York City Healthcare Coalition Annual Emergency Management Conference. We have been preparing a presentation which we hope will benefit the whole coalition and help us to develop ongoing partnerships and additional partnerships with emergency management professionals. So stay tuned for that. We will definitely post those slides on our website. And that is, I know I speak very fast, but that is all I have today. And Carol only gave me 3 to 5 minutes, so I'm rushing through that. But I will turn it over to Al.
Thanks so much, Eva. Thank you. So the first thing to really to take up and maybe just emphasize at this point, because Angel and Sophia, did a great job with this, is really the winter weather preparation. I want to say that on November 20th, the New York City Advanced Warning System released really a terrific guide for winter weather preparedness. The guide really, it addressed a number of categories, including high-risk populations, multiple conditions and factors for vigilance during emergencies, carbon monoxide, access to emergency assistance resources, access to power and utilities maintenance, flu vaccines, and more. And again, Angel really did a terrific job with it. A couple things I just would want to highlight in there as well is that, in the populations of really that were identified of highest risk, they included the homeless, particularly those not in shelters, individuals that are heavy substance abuse users, individuals who live in a home without adequate heat or no heat at all, older individuals, infants, individuals with medical conditions such as heart and lung disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, individuals with serious mental health related conditions or developmental disabilities or dementia, and individuals that have disabilities that limit mobility. And again, this is it's a wonderful a summary with links to resources. If you go onto the Advanced Warning System, New York City, you can pull that up, and I'll put that in the chat in a moment. But the last item I was talking about with regard to limited mobility is really a good segue into this next area, which are the TALs. And I am going to put that this in the chat, and then I'll just put the link to the advanced warning system in the chat. So many of you may remember that back around, I don't know, I think we worked on it from maybe 2014 or 15 all the way to 2016, when the Department of Health issued a Dear Administrator letter advising agencies that they had to have transportation assistant levels incorporated within their emergency management plans, and that for each patient on your roster that you serve, that you have to indicate the respective TALs for that individual. And those were really broken down into three categories. Individuals who are non-ambulatory but have to be transported supine. Individuals that are non-ambulatory but could be transported in wheelchair or other means, and then individuals that are ambulatory. So this fall on September 26th, and I put this DAL in the chat. The TALs, particularly for the first two levels, were revised to create additional delineation of patients within those categories. So, for example, the individuals in TALs 1, which are the non-ambulatory patients who really have to be transported supine, there are now in three categories: stretcher, vent, and bariatric. And then for individuals that are in the level 2, which is in the wheelchair level, there are individuals that involve infusion lines that need to be converted to saline lines or need to be discontinued, or individuals with a continued IV infusion that must be escorted by a nurse or paramedic during the transport. So I encourage everybody to please be sure that you've reviewed the latest administrative directive, and updated your TALs both in your plan and on your patient roster. So the third area that I just want to speak to is just to reference several of the initiatives that, with really the wonderful support of Fidel, Al, and the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, that we have these several initiatives that we are working on to support you with in the coming months. The first is a session related to communication, collaboration and coordination, and it will really focus on the kind of partnering that providers have to do with health plans in order to ensure that, number one, the preparedness is informed and as functional as possible, and that, number two, in the response area, that the ground has been covered in advance to know exactly how to proceed when there are emergencies. And that includes everything from authorization for service changes, who's getting the physician orders, modification of plans of care, a payment authorization. It's really the full body of work. And the way things have really flowed, from the various regulatory systems is that home care agencies and hospices are under federal conditions of participation, which were updated around 2017 to include very detailed requirements related to emergency preparedness. And the state has regulations that apply to state licensed entities, as well as contract provisions that apply to the plans. So our first session is really going to focus on best practices for partnering and executing emergency preparedness in those circumstances. The second
Al, I don't want to cut you off. I just want to make sure we have some time for open discussion. So
okay. So
I'm just trying to watch the clock so that people can ask their general questions too. Thank you.
Very good. I'll sum quickly. The next session really will relate to emergency preparedness in partnership as it relates to individual work with patients and families, which are also part of those requirements. We're also working together, obviously, on forums such as this, and then the final one will be a tabletop exercise that will focus on critical partnerships among home and community-based providers, as well as multiple sectors. That's it. Carol, back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Al. And I know that everybody's excited about that tabletop because home care doesn't always get opportunities. And now we're taking questions from anywhere on anything. I'm having a hard time seeing the chat, just so if my colleagues could help out. So I have the slides up.
No questions in chat right now.
Oh, thanks, Laura. And thank you to the next Eva Cohen. Well, Al, maybe I can give it back to you to
No, that's okay. We're good.
discuss more stuff. We all have so many great projects that we do with New York City. We get excited and we want to share more details about the tabletop.
Well, in terms of the tabletop, so the main thing is that as Carol said, home care is often really not as functional part or central part of the exercises that are conducted as I think are warranted by the over a million individuals that are receiving home care and hospice services in the state. And certainly, as I mentioned earlier, the role of the high priority patients that really must receive services contemporaneous with the day, or even a double day period. You can't really go without. So one of the things that we want to focus on in the tabletop is really the relationship of how agencies can work together and support each other in the circumstances of the emergency and in the preparedness. I think that really Angel and Sophia did a wonderful job really referring to, and showing the spirit of collaboration and cooperation that's so essential in emergency preparedness and the execution of emergency response. And so in the tabletop that we envision, we'll be focusing on what can be done in a preparedness environment in mutuality, as well as across community-based providers as well as across sectors. I will jump to say that one of the things that we did, we had a summit in September. I'm sorry, in October on emergency preparedness, and one of the things we focused on is the development of mutual aid agreements among home and community-based providers. Barb Citarella of RBC Limited did a tremendous presentation on that, and we're going to utilize that in a broader effort across New York State for supporting mutual aid agreement in agencies. So in any case, and we want to include the plans in this where it is appropriate, because so many of the decisions at this point, because of the way in which the system is now structured, have to be done in partnership or with that degree of mutuality. So,
Right.
Yeah, put the period on that.
That's awesome.
Carl, before you let everyone know about the evaluation that's on the screen, I'd like to take a minute to ask.
Okay, there's one more question too. I want to make sure we get to Fidel. Go ahead.
Yes, to get to Al Villacara, just to thank him, if he can come on screen. I know you mentioned, thanks for raising that. If Al can show his face on screen, to thank him for working along with the home care and hospice sectors in the time he's been here. Our providers out there may just know his name, but to let them know that he's been a great asset and very informative, very collaborative, and in pushing for us working and getting us involved with the other sectors. So Al, as we say, I say farewell, and our group says farewell to you and wish you all the best of luck. I say thank you.
Thank you so much, Fidel. Thank you so much, all. I really appreciate that. And it's been wonderful to work together, and all the momentum that's here, and to capitalize on that, to keep it going forward. And I know the sector is in great hands, or sectors are in great hands, and really, again, to the further incorporation with the coalition. I think exciting times ahead, and I'm excited to see where it all goes. So again, a big thank you to you all. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
And thanks, Fidel, for making us pause to recognize him, because he is a big part of everything we do. So while you guys are all clicking on the evaluation, because I know you want to do it because we value your feedback so much, I want to just address one question that was in the chat. Someone asked about collaboration at the state level. We have a provider that serves both So I just do want to let you know that the associations are in work in concert with the local regional HEPICs, Health Emergency Preparedness Coalitions, and I'm going to one in the Lower Hudson Valley actually this week. So you are, sometimes they can accommodate a lot of providers, sometimes they can't. So if you want to reach out to one of the association leads here on this webinar, we can, see if we can get you in to come with us and see what it's all about. But we do collaborate with all the other sectors at those HEPIC meetings and, excuse me, raise the awareness of home care and hospice as essential partners in care. So we are working across the state as well. We get state grants as well as city grants. So I'm going to leave this up here so that everybody makes sure they get it. When you get the slides, you'll notice that there are our contact information. We don't need to flash that now. And there are some useful links for you also on the slides. And you'll be receiving those later today, possibly tomorrow. We have to make sure we can upload the recording and everything seamlessly for you. 159. Bam. You're laughing at me, Al.
No, very good, very good. I think it'd be great to just to as we're closing to reiterate Angel's comments. Plan ahead. Get the New York City my emergency plan booklet. 2, get your go bag ready, have your supplies ready, and 3, stay informed. And that's not just on the agency side. That's also, I think, cues up a best practice in working with your patients and families, because obviously they need to all do that the same. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Please be sure to do that evaluation. If you didn't catch it right now, it will be included in your follow-up email that, like I said, will go out as soon as we can get that recording uploaded. So thank you very much, and we're going to end the meeting.
Thanks much to all. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.